Ladies and gentlemen, I must warn you, we are on the brink of witnessing an extraordinary display of watchmaking ineptitude. For those of a delicate constitution or tender years, I advise you to avert your eyes. As for those intrepid enough to continue watching, all we ask is that you spare some charity for the unfortunate fellow on your screen. Ladies and gentlemen, look at this. It's a lovely little GP, a Girard Perregaux, nice in all departments. I feel shocked and horrified when I see scratches on the automatic rotors, knowing that in all likelihood this damage wasn't caused by civilians, but by other watchmakers. Appalling behavior. We shall follow standard operating procedures and remove the automatic works before extracting the movement from the case. Just 3 screws. Next on the checklist is removing the power from the mainspring. All watchmakers forget to do this once. The result is at least 2 of the following 3 outcomes: exploding watch movement, broken parts, and lost parts. The stem needs to be removed now. What we've developed here is a tunnel vision. And where do people with tunnel vision go? That's right, down rabbit holes. Deep, deep down rabbit holes. So what's occurring? I hear you ask. We're trying to remove the stem, and despite loosening the setting lever screw, the stem is refusing to absent itself from the watch movement. Rather than stopping and taking a step back and observing the cause of the problem, we dived in, bottom first, and decided on flailing, ineffective action. We are removing the crown wheel, ratchet wheel, and click along with the barrel bridge to get a better view of the setting lever. This will not help resolve the issue. A clue: you may remember in our last video we mentioned the second rule of watchmaking: do not assume what you find is correct. Unusually, the click screw on this movement also secures the barrel bridge. With the barrel bridge off, everything looks perfectly normal, and we can poke at the setting lever with an oiler and see it is completely free from the main plate. Let's see if you can tell when the issue was finally spotted by our hapless hero. 3, 2, 1, and... Problem solved. The issue was the movement ring was incorrectly positioned, so the slot for the stem was at the 9 o'clock position instead of 3. Finally, we've arrived at step 3, hands and dial off. What an absolute boondoggle. Shall we have a little chat about this watch? This watch belongs to Robert from South Wales, an absolutely top-notch fellow who has an eye for a lovely watch. Hope you enjoy this, Rob. Girard Perregaux tend to fly a little under the radar while producing watches of increasing quality. Today they can be fairly called a absolutely tip-top watchmaker. The brand was formed in 1854 by the metaphorical marriage of 2 watchmaking companies and the actual marriage of 2 watchmaking people, Constant Girard and Marie Perregaux. In recent years, they've produced 2 watches that perfectly exemplify a company finding the balance between its horological history and unique horological innovation. Look at that, a broken setting lever spring, probably top of the what breaks in watches list. Some movements, like this one, still work quite well without a setting lever spring. In fact, early watches just relied on the yoke spring and yoke to click between hand setting and winding. I wonder, will there be any other surprises, he said foreshadowingly. In 2014, GP released a watch based on its first patent from 1854, the three-bridge neo-tourbillon, as traditional and Swiss as a cowbell. In 2013, the company released its constant escapement, an astounding piece of engineering that replaces the clunk of a pallet fork with an oscillating silicon spring. An innovation more groundbreaking than the coaxial escapement found in Omega's watches. Right then, just need to remove the escape wheel and balance jewels and we can move to the other side. A combination of care and brass tweezers reduces the chance of marking the shock springs. We'll start with the other cap jewel on the escape wheel, then the train of wheels bridge can be shifted. This particular movement is actually in TA 1256. It has an interesting crown wheel that we should take a closer look at later. The second wheel has its own mini bridge. Let's get the mainspring barrel out of the way. Look at that, the lid wasn't on. What is going on with this watch? What a palaver! Escape wheel and pallet fork out of the way and we can get the last part, the second wheel, clear of the movement. But wait, there's more. The automatic works are still in one piece. Let's do something about that. And something that's easily missed. We've taken the mainspring out, but this particular watch uses a separate bridle that must be removed, cleaned, and lubricated. The watch has been cleaned and we are straight into assembly. This is a new mainspring barrel. The old one was damaged to the point that the lid would not click home. Before we put the bridle back in, we apply braking grease to the barrel. This allows the mainspring to slip. Not too much, not too little. The bridle gets in the way when we're fitting the replacement mainspring, so we've put it into a slightly smaller diameter mainspring winder. Excellent. A lid that closes now. Next job before we start assembly proper, oiling the balance jewels. We start by dipping the jewels in epilam and allowing the solvent to fully evaporate. The 9010 oil can be deposited and then careful plonking of the shaft tongue. You may have heard me mention in the past that a watch service is good for over 1 billion ticks and tops. That's not hyperbole. Let's do the math and the maths. This watch does 5 tick-tocks a second. That's 300 a minute, 18,000 an hour, 432,000 a day, 13,140,000 a month, 157,680,000 a year, which equal around 1.6 billion ticks and tocks in the 10 years until the next service. And that little drop of oil we put on the cap jewel will still be there working away. The center wheel is back. Hooray! This wheel is driven by the mainspring barrel. Everything else we install on this side of the watch has one prime job: to keep this wheel turning at precisely 1 revolution an hour. Escape wheel. The interesting wheel. It works with the pallet fork to release power from the mainspring in bite-sized chunks instead of all at once. It was the ability to view linear processes as quantifiable packets and make machines to measure those packets that is at the foundation of much of modern technology and scientific thinking. Good work, horologists. And a little 9010 on the 4th wheel and it can be plopped into place. The long pivot on the 4th wheel holds the 2nd hand. I suppose I should mention the 3rd wheel that went into. It's very much the middle management of watch wheels required for things to work. Shall we go for the cheeky tapping the movement holder method to get the pivots to drop into place? Sometimes it's genuinely difficult to remain the most humble watchmaker on YouTube. That makes up for the removing of the stem shenanigans at the start. Let's call it evens. That is all looking most satisfactory. What's next, you ask? It's the setting lever screw. We shall reapply the barrel bridge, and then we can populate it with the required parts. This is the bottom half of the crown wheel. It's turned by the winding pinion during hand winding and then goes on to turn the top half of the crown wheel. Why so complicated? It has a built-in ratchet, so when the automatic works are winding the watch, only the top half of the crown wheel spins. This stops energy being wasted turning the stem, allowing it to be used to wind the watch more efficiently. Click spring is nestled in position. Click to follow. Just a sniff of lubricant. The combined click and barrel bridge screw is reintegrated. The ratchet wheel can now be docked with the movement. Let's give the pallet fork jewels an extra cleaning. As we move from the mainspring barrel towards the balance wheel, the torque drastically reduces by a factor of thousands while the speed increases. Low friction becomes the critical element in the watch's success. As torque decreases, pivots become finer and more delicate. I've never broken a center wheel pivot. Let's not talk about whether we have or haven't broken far too many pallet fork pivots to be happy about it. We are depositing some power into the mainspring and then shall leave a small amount of special grease on the pallet fork exit jewel. It's a non-Newtonian fluid. Sir Isaac Newton must be bloody furious. They named a whole class of fluids based on the fact that they don't follow his law of viscosity. Escape wheel cap jewel is epilammed and some oil is plopped in the center. Shall we put the balance wheel in and see how we're doing? It's okay, don't panic. The bottom jewel needs to be seated. That's looking good. We shall proceed. We should just show a couple of jewels being oiled. Please be assured they were all lubricated absolutely perfectly. Over to the keyless and motion works. Setting lever is the first part to be returned to its home. And just a couple of turns on the setting lever screw. Grease where the winding pinion rubs on the main plate. Winding pinion settles into position and will lubricate the clutch teeth though, for reasons we'll see later. This part gets less wear than in most movements. Sliding pinion is planted and more grease where it engages with the yoke. Stem goes in now, but we won't lubricate it yet, as it's going to be in and out a couple of times before we're finished. Blot some HP 1300 on the posts and click the cannon pinion back where it belongs. Minute and intermediate wheels are returned. The chamfer on the intermediate wheel gives a smoother feel when hand setting. More grease and the yoke will be mounted onto the movement. Look at this yoke spring, absolutely terrifying. I've cleared the area and have alerted the authorities. Here we go. Apparently 28% of the space junk in low Earth orbit is actually lost yoke springs. NASA won't admit it though, because the Swatch group keeps giving them new Speedmasters. True story. Here's the replacement setting lever spring. It gives one an immense sense of satisfaction to nurse a wounded watch back to full health. You know the drill? Partially install the screw. Engage the setting lever, then fully tighten. Cover plate for the intermediate and minute wheel is anchored into position with two ridiculously small screws. Quick test of hand setting and winding. Notice how when we reverse winding direction, the winding pinion stays engaged with the clutch and doesn't slip. Let's turn the watch over and find out why. There's the answer. The ratchet in the two-part crown wheel has taken over that duty. One other job. The regulator pins are pinching the hairspring and need adjusting. Just a tiny amount. If we make the gap too big, the rate will be reduced and positional variance will increase. Our wheel and dial washer are placed where they belong. Dial, hands, and case next. There's still quite a few parts in the tray. Must be for the automatic works. Let's get that back together. The reversing wheels have been lubricated with lubricator. Tiny amount of oil in the center of the wheel where the posts are about to be placed. Oscillating weight is reattached, and then we'll get this back into the movement. Quick check that everything is as it should be. If you would like your watch to be serviced, repaired, or restored, click the link for the Gentleman's Watch Services website in this video's description. Every service includes the production of a short video showcasing your watch's movement. And if you're lucky, your watch may star in a full service video like this lovely little geeping. Very happy with the variance between horizontal and vertical positions. That's it for this one. Hope you have a marvelous day in all departments.